they'll ask a question, like someone will say, they believe the Bible, or because the Bible said so, or because it's God's word, or because they had an experience, with God. And the street epistemologist will say something like, well, but other people from other religions make that same claim. So why is yours the right one? So something of that sort.
Right. So let me just reiterate that today we'll only really be scratching the surface on these questions. When I provide answers or whatever, don't think that this is everything that there is to it. So one way that we can respond to this, and a way that Christians have often responded, is to say that, well, Christianity in particular has very, very good arguments and evidence in support of it. And I actually agree that there is surprisingly good evidence for the specific truth of Christianity. And now, people are going to disagree on that. A Muslim apologist is going to disagree. They're going to say that, well, no, Christianity doesn't have good reasons in defense of it. It's really just Islam that has good reasons. But this takes us to a theory in epistemology that is called equal weight theory. And so what this basically says is that when two people disagree about some claim, then all that we can do at that point is to just revert to skepticism. So suppose that we have like 5 Christians, 5 non-Christians in a room. They all disagree. They all have access to the same evidence. And so the only rational thing for them to do at this point is to give up belief. The non-Christians should give up belief in whatever they believe. The Christians should give up belief in whatever they believe. And so one of the problems with this view is the view itself might actually be self-defeating. And, it's not a case of might be self-defeating. I think it is actually self-defeating. And here's what that means. So this view itself, equal weight theory, is not something that everybody accepts. Not everybody accepts equal weight theory. But if then that's the case, if we have 2 people in a room, one of them agrees with equal weight theory, one of them disagrees with equal weight theory, then the correct response is to give up belief in equal weight theory. So this view itself is not a very good reason to abandon our original belief. And so if we have a Christian in a room, we have a non-Christian, we have a Hindu, a Muslim, or whatever, the appropriate response is not always to just abandon belief or just to revert to skepticism. That doesn't follow. It really only follows if we assume this thing called equal weight theory, which itself, like I said, is self-defeating. So this is not a very good reason to abandon belief. And let me just give one other reason here. So there's a difference between having a justification for a belief and, on the other hand, knowing what is actually the case. Or not knowing is probably the wrong term here. So let me just put it like this. So when someone asks, or when a street epistemologist asks, does just believing in something give you knowledge? Or if a Muslim came up and told me that they believe in Allah because of faith, how would we determine which belief is true? This is a very, very common question that you get. It's a variation of the one that you gave. Here's the way that I suggest you respond. It's a little like asking if my intuition that other minds exist determines or makes it the case that other minds exist. But these sort of intuitions or seemings, the way that something seems to me, this was never intended to operate like that. My intuition or my experience, my religious experience that Christianity is true doesn't determine that God exists or that Christianity is true, but it can be used to justify my belief in God. And so some people don't like this response because they don't want to admit that the Mormon or that the Muslim can be justified in their belief. They don't want to admit that. But I don't really see any reason to reject that. I mean, I think these people can be justified in their belief on the basis of their personal experience. But what we'd want to do at that point is if we want to go beyond just sort of this personal justification, beyond that, we want to actually look into the arguments and evidence, and I have nothing against that. I think that we should be looking into the arguments, the specific evidences in support of Christianity. Like I said, I think there's really, really good, strong reason to think that Christianity is true. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the sort of way that I would approach that question.
Okay, yeah. I think it is helpful for us to realize that, being justified in believing something is a separate question from its being true or not.
Right, that's what I meant earlier when I was saying being justified is different than knowing it's true. What I meant to say is that being justified is a separate question from is something true. And so we can have justification. We can even have justification for false beliefs.
Right. And, we see this in other areas. If you remove it from the religious arena, I mean, it's a common phrase, don't judge a man until you've walked a mile in his shoes, right? So someone could be wrong, but you don't understand where they're coming from, right? It's a very common idea that gets passed around. But whenever it comes to religious things, oh, no, can't do that. It just has to be
right. Well, here's a really easy to understand example of something that could be a justified false belief. So before we had evidence that the earth was round, most people had the belief that the earth was flat. Now this we believe as living in today's contemporary society, we believe that this is a false belief. Nevertheless, anyone who hasn't been presented the evidence of a round earth is going to be justified in believing that the earth is flat. So that's one way that you could look at this, that your experience, your own personal experience provides some level of justification, but that doesn't mean that belief is true. It just means that you have some justification for believing it.
Right. Just real quick, this is probably a really bad example. It's going to make me look like an idiot. Years ago, I was delivering pizza, and I was delivering in a rough neighborhood. And I'm surprised they even let us deliver there. But I come walking from a house back to the car, and there's three guys come walking towards me, and I mean they look like they are straight out of a gangster movie. I mean it's like stereotype almost. And here I am, this scrawny little 20-year-old, at night all alone on a dark street with these three big thug-looking guys walking up to me. And so what do I believe is probably about to happen? Right? I believe, oh no, I'm probably about to get jumped or robbed or something. In that area of town, that would not be an founded assumption. I'm carrying cash on me. They would know this, so that's would make sense. Of course, they walk up and then they start asking me, hey, how much is a pizza? What specials do you have? Are there any good deals going on? That kind of stuff. So, but at the moment, here come some guys who, I mean, everything that my culture and thinking tells me, here's what, bad guys look like. I'm in a bad part of town. I have money. I'm all alone, dark street. It would make sense that someone would feel, oh no, I'm in danger. When in reality, I really wasn't in danger. There was no danger. I don't know, maybe that was just a horrible example. Maybe I should move on before I embarrass myself more.
No, I think it expresses the same idea, is that we can have a justification for a belief even if that belief is false. Yeah, I think that that's true. I don't really see any reason that we shouldn't hold something like that. Let me just make another quick point here. Religious experience provides a kind of what's termed non-transferable justification. It's a personal justification. I can't transfer my experiences to someone else. I can't transfer, for instance, I can't transfer my memory of what I ate for breakfast to you. I can't transfer any of my conscious experiences to anybody. But I mean, that doesn't mean that, what I believe on the basis of my experience is false or unjustified. It just means that I can't transfer that to anybody else. So there's two different kinds of evidence, if we want to look at it that way. There's the type of evidence that's available only to me, which is my conscious experience. But then there's also a kind of propositional or an evidential kind of evidence that is available to everybody. And so we often just assume, or I don't think we often assume this, I think it gets assumed that the only type of evidence that's legitimate is the second type, which is the empirical or scientific or whatever kind of evidence. But I think that the personal experience and my own conscious experiences, I think that evidence is actually really good evidence, and it can be better evidence in some cases. So yeah, I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Well, and you keep throwing out the E word, evidence, and I think that's one thing that this question just kind of shoots right past and ignores. I think this falls into that atheist assumption that all religions are just wishful thinking. It's just all, made up, fairy tale, faith kind of stuff. If someone says, oh, well, you say your holy book is reliable. Well, the Muslim says that his holy book is reliable. But that's apples and oranges, because they have different manuscript evidence. They have different historical reliability. They have, the comparison of the two are completely different. And so whenever you dig into by what standard do we determine a text is reliable, their measures on that is going to be completely different. So just to say that you both claim it doesn't actually mean that there's any reason to thing. I don't for that to create any kind of doubt.
Yeah, I would agree with that.